All right, this is part 3 of our 4-speed basket case rebuild. So this is the third and final episode of this series. I have my case all sorted out, which we did in the last video. I have all my parts here that I have cleaned and ready to assemble so we can get straight into throwing this thing together. I have this fucking screwdriver. I also have all the parts to put this thing together, all the gaskets, all the bushes, new main shaft, new kicker gears, everything we needed to put this thing back together. So let's stop screwing around and let's chuck this thing together. Alright, so basically where I want to start with this thing, I want to start with our countershaft assembly. So that is our first and second assembly. The reason I want to start there and knock this together first is we have to test fit this in the case. Remember, we want to set that float. We want to make sure this isn't tight in our case. We're aiming for whatever it is, 10 thou float, 5 thou float, whatever. Just something so that this doesn't bang back and forth and it's not tight. So come in a bit closer, we will get our trusty manual out. Don't be a snob, just look at the fucking manual. It could save you a lot of headache in the future if you just, if you forget which way around a stupid little washer goes. Look in the book, double check, makes it a lot easier to put these things together once, not twice, and not blow it up. So get in a bit closer, let's have a look at this. Alright, so I've got my book here with my countershaft assembly here. Now, if you guys remember in the first episode when I tore this thing apart, on our, what is this even freaking called? 13B, so countershaft gear. On our countershaft gear, which is this guy, remember it was running this style bearing. This is a capsulated needle roller bearing. And I said we were going to use that. Well, we can't, and this is why. So a tiny little difference between these two. So this is the one I need, and this is the one we had. Now, just by eye, you can't tell the difference between these two, but if you measure our little race in here where our bearings go, it is a little bit different, and you can't see it by eye, you have to measure it. So if we measure this, this is 1, 2, 3.5 thou under 1 inch. And if we measure this one, this is the correct one. This is 6 thou, 6.5 thou, 6 thou over an inch. So this one is like almost 10 thou bigger than this one. Now, this is for a later style gearbox. So like, I think it's like a 76 on where it runs this capsulated needle roller here, and the main the countershaft is actually smaller. See, it doesn't go on there. So someone just smashed this together last time. That's why it has this big heat ring through here. So that actually doesn't fit in there. So you need a different countershaft. Now, the reason I didn't just change the countershaft and run these bearings is because if you change the countershaft, you got to change the bush in the gearbox where the countershaft goes through. Otherwise, it'll bang around like a cock in a sock. Now, to work out what you're going to need, I'll show you. It's a little bit tricky, but it's sort of what needs to happen. So like we said, we're going to measure our countershaft. So let's measure this guy. So our countershaft is 0.755. So that is 5 thou over 3/4. And then we want to measure one of our needle rollers. These are the style that I'm going to use. This is the early style. They're just loose rollers like that. So measure one of these rollers. So one of these rollers is, so it's bang on 0.125, so an eighth. So that is an eighth. So if we were to put this in here, well, we are going to put this in here, and then when you put one of these each side, so we've got to times this by 2. So 2 times 8 is 1/4. So what we do with that, this was 5 thou over 3/4, right? So we'll just make it easy for ourselves, and we'll call this 3/4 and then add 1/4, which makes it 1 inch. So 1 inch and 5 thou. So it's 5 thou over 1 inch. And what did we say this was? We said this was 6 thou over an inch, didn't we? So that is 1 thou bigger. Just double check this. Yeah, so that's 6 thou over an inch. So when we add this stuff together, we've got 5 thou over an inch. So this is 6 thou over an inch. So we have a thou of play in there, basically. So half a thou a side, and that is perfect. When we measure this one up, we have 5 thou of interference. So this one is no good for this early style shaft and case. Like I said, you could mess around, but it's easier just to change this. Now, the only other thing I've got to fix here is this has a speedo drive and this one doesn't now. So a speedo drive is pretty simple. You just knock it off. It's just pressed on. But if you don't have a speedo drive, don't worry about doing it. But remember, there's 2 different speedo drives as well. Make sure you put it on the same way. That is crucial. So there is a fine and a coarse speedo drive as well. So make sure you have the right drive for your sender. Otherwise, you'll blow the wheel up. Alright, so that is our new gear assembly. So let's throw this thing to the side. That thing is really only good for a later model gearbox, all the internals. So just make sure you put that aside and don't use it. So I'm going to set this up and then we're going to slam this guy together now. Alright, so I have all my countershaft assembly bits here, bits, bobs, needle rollers, brand new bushes, and everything to put this thing together. So this box is going to be brand freaking spanker. So if we just look at our little booklet here, we'll go this direction. I find it's easier to stand this stuff up and load it from the top instead of trying to load it from the side. So we're just going to don't worry about any of our needle roller stuff to start with. We're just going to worry about this top assembly here. So remember, whenever we put this thing together, shit loads of grease, because this thing is going to spin, I don't know how many times before it's going to get oil from the gearbox in there. So we're going to start with our number 9. So we're going to start with our bushing. This is our brand new bushing. Came in that whole kit that I got. So that goes on there to start with. Look how nice that fits. That is bang on there. And then the next one is our A. So this is, what's 8 again? This is our countershaft low gear. So this is our first gear. Like I said, don't be stingy with the grease. It freaking needs it. Put that bitch on there. Give it a test spin. How nice is that? No back and forth, nothing. So after that guy, we have a thrust washer. So that's number 7. Thrust washer goes on just like that. And then we have a clip. So in that kit as well, brand new freaking clip. Can't complain about that. You really want to replace these clips every time you do it. Sure, I've done my own boxes without it, but new clips, just, make it nice. So new clip, try not to bend it, just be nice and ginger with it. Look at that. That back and forth there, none of it. Look at that, that is freaking mint. The gearbox gets a bit of a whine if you've got a fucked third bush, but that is mint. So what goes next? We've got a dog. Now remember, this dog can go either which way. It's only your third and fourth dog that has a direction. So that one, oh, that's a fucking bit tight. Hopefully it's just the start. Yeah, just the start and a bit of grease. That's better. Cool, and then we have this is a crucial bit that a lot of people forget. See this number 4 here. This has a washer between the gear and our next gear. So that washer goes there like that. And then our new bush, a new second gear bush, pops on there like that. Nice fit. And then the last bit to the puzzle is our second gear here. Grease again. Bang, on like that. So the way this works, that dog just slides back and forth to select whatever gear you want, first or second. Sweet, so that is that, pretty well done. The next thing we want to do is chuck our loose needle rollers in. Now, a little trick way to do this, put our washer in. So this is our bottom thrust washer. So the needle roller always needs a washer top and bottom for the thrust. So he goes in there like that, whichever way looks the best. Sometimes if they're run before, one side will have run marks and the other won't, so just flick it over. We want to pack this full of grease. Grease is your friend with these loose needle rollers because we have to stick them in there for when we put it in the case. So jam that guy in there like that, and then get all our needle rollers, and I just like to dump them in my lid here. Makes life a little bit easier to pick them up so you don't stick your finger in the packet every time and get grease all over it. You need every single one of these, so don't even fucking lose one of them. And then we just load this thing into here. So we just go around and slowly load them in. I like to put one opposite to start with, just to get the shaft to center, and then load the freaking rest in. So you guys don't need to watch me do this. I hate the thought of someone over my shoulder watching me freaking do something dodgy. Anyway, come back once I have loaded this guy full of needles. So I have this thing full of rollers now. You can spins nicely, does all the gear. Now what we want to do, just get a bit of heaps of grease, jam it in there like that. Like I said, we want to stick these needles in position as best we can so that they don't move when we put it in the case. So just jam it full of grease like that, get our thrust washer on the outside and push it in there. So that'll push all the grease between all those needle rollers so they stay in position. So now what we've got to do is pull this thing out like that, and then if you look in there, all our needle rollers are sitting in there nicely, all glued in position with grease. So then what we got to do is flip this thing over and then repeat with this side. So before I put that in, chuck our little thrust washer in the bottom. That is the most important part. Do not fucking forget that. Otherwise you will be in trouble. This thing will blow up quick smart. Alright, so I'll put all the rollers in this thing again, and then we are going to test fit this in the case. That is the fun part. So I have all my freaking needle rollers in here now done. This one's a bit difficult because the needle rollers want to come with it. So pull our counter shaft out like that. Now, the last bit in this is number one, and that is a washer. So this is your thrust washer for the whole gear assembly. Now, the reason I have so many of them is because they're all different sizes. For instance, this is a 74 thou. These ones might be 100 thou. I've just got a few different sizes. So what we want to do, we want to put this in our case and test our float. Now, this is the difficult point. So just remember, I like to put this in, sometimes we put a small one in to start with so we know that it's going to fit, and then we can measure our float. So what's this one? So that's an 80 by the looks. Yep, 50, 75, that's an 80. So let's put the 74 in, and hopefully we can just measure the float then. If you put a big one in, it won't fit. But if you put a small one in, then you can measure the float. So stick that in position, because that is going to be the trickiest part to put in the case. So put that, line it up, sweet. So sometimes this makes it a bit easier. Clean the grease off your counter shaft and put oil on it. Makes it slide on the grease a bit easier and doesn't pick up all the needle rollers. So let's see if I can do this in a way that you guys can see. So we're just gonna put that in there. Don't drop it. Line it up. Shaft through. Don't put it through the whole way. You want to have a look on this side, what's going on in there. I think I'm still lined up, so let's push this the whole way through. Ah, look at that, I got it. So that is our gear set in there. But see, we'll have a look. See that? See that back and forth banging there? So what we do, we bang it to one side, get our feeler gauges and measure how much float we've got there. So I'm going to go with, let's say this to start with. It's on the larger side. So we're putting it between the boss in the case and that washer we just put in. So that's too big. Let's go a 20 thou. Oh, come on. Let's go a freaking 20. Where are they? 20 thou. All right, so 20 fits. So like I said, we want maybe 5 thou in there. So we've got a 75 there, and if we got a 20, we probably want to aim for maybe that 100 thou mark, maybe that 95 thou mark. So we pull this back out. So let's see if I've got one first. Let's measure these. 80, 80, 80, yeah, 75. So I'm going to go dig through some parts and see if I can find a larger one. But now that that's all sorted, we know what washer to put in there. Take this back out, sit it to the side, and then let's start putting our main shaft assembly in here. All right, so before we can put any of our main shaft together, we sort of got to go through and do a bit of admin before we can sort of slap this thing together. You know, we got to put some bearings in our support there. We got to do our top gear bush, and we got to have a look at our kicker gears. So let's whip open. You guys remember, for some reason, the end of this main shaft was cut off with a grinder. So this is a freaking brand spanker. Good unboxing video. I can't even fucking get it apart. So brand spanker here. This is a, because this will be for a pan head, this is a 37 to 64. So pan head stuff before it goes to starter motor, that's 65. So that's why it goes through all those years. So basically, I'm going to replace this bush anyway, but just for good practice, you would put it in here like that. See how it's got a bit of movement back and forth? We are going to replace that bush there. It flops around badly. The other thing we got to have a look at is I just went ahead and I bought a complete kicker gear set just because there was a bit of fucking wear on it, and to be honest, it was fucking pretty cheap. So it comes with a spring, comes with all the kicker gears, comes with the bush. That spring needs to be fucking swung off. So it comes with our gears here. You guys are getting a 2-for-1 here. Look at all this unboxing videos. Lucky pricks. A little trick too, you can get this kickstart ratchet gear kit. You can get it in a larger gear. I think it's a 617 tooth starter. So you can put another tooth in it, which gives you a bit more rotation. So these comes with brand new bushes in there. So I like to check them on our freaking shaft here. Oh, look at that. They are freaking nice. Sometimes you have to lap those to size. That is why I'm checking that. Let's have a look at the other side. So this is the one that locks to the top. Oh, look at the paper. I'm doing the paper. So that, obviously it sticks like that. And that is the noise you hear, like this. That's the noise you hear when the kicker gear, when your kicker's coming back up. So that's those little gears there. So they go on the end like that. So that's mint. This is only a single key. The last one was dual key. No big deal. Now, our bearing. So this is our main bearing in our gearbox here. This guy, where else does it live? It goes on here. Goes on there and then it locks down on that nut there. Now this is the cheaper style. So if you guys want to buy this at home, this is the part number for the cheaper style 6305-2NSE9. Now you can buy the Gyms ones and they cost like, in Australia anyway, they cost like 90 bucks, where you can go to any bearing shop and get exactly the same bearing like this. I think this was 14 bucks or something. So because this is a grease-filled bearing and we want to change it to an oil-fed, we just pop our seals out. So like this, pop our seals out of the dog, and now it is an oil bearing. It's that simple. That's all, you know, a Gyms gear is anyway. Now sometimes when you put these in, these have had a million bearings in them and they're a bit sloppy, so I like to just put a little bit of this is retaining compound. So this sort of goes hard and stops the outer of this race from spinning. Because you want the bearing, the rollers in the bearing to do the work and not the outer race spinning in our housing here. So see how fucking soft that was? So that's all sweet. Now this bearing compound will go off and stick it in position. So just get off any excess there because it will go hard and wreak havoc on something else in the box. So that's that guy done. Like I said, he lives on there. We'll do that later. But the main thing we want to get to now, we want to put our top gear bush in. This is pretty well the most important bush in the whole gearbox. This is what stops the shuddering, the whining, the shitty to change gear, the pissing out of oil. This is what fixes all of it. So we need to press this one out, press this one in, and then we need to size it. So we need to get in there, either machine it, ream it, hone it, whatever, to get it perfectly on size with this guy. See, it doesn't even fit on there now, and it's about to get a heap smaller when I press it in. So I'll go ahead and press that in, and then I'll show you how to size it. All right, so what I'm going to do with my little top gear here, I'm going to put it in the lathe, tighten that up, and then to do this job, I'm going to use this. I've seen this before in a previous video. This is a adjustable ream. So what we do is put that in there, put some freaking oil in it. I want to make sure this guy has heaps of oil. I'm going to put this between centers to make it a little bit easier. But basically all we do is spin this bitch one direction and push it through. We pull this thing out. You can see it does a pretty nice job of that. So all we want to do is get our main shaft. We get our main shaft and we just try it on here. So it needs a little bit more. This doesn't go yet. So all we do with this ream, we just turn these two nuts, this nut that way and this nut down, and that will make it smaller that way and then bigger this way. So I'm going to crank this up bigger a little bit and we'll just keep going until we get the fit we want. Alright, so after a bit of fiddling, this is the sort of finish I got. Straight on, no movement, nice and easy to spin. Listen to that. You guys are going to have to change the channel to Pornhub in a sec. So, that is our top gear done. So now all we got to do is start putting this main shaft together. So we'll leave this aside for a sec. Have a look at our trusty little book here. So what it's saying is to put our main shaft together, we want to put a few bits and pieces on. So we want to put our number 8. So when I changed our countershaft gear, I made sure that an early and a late still have the same, what do they call this thing? First and second gear. I want to make sure it had the same amount of teeth. Otherwise, you guys are going to have a mesh problem. So just remember that sort of shit. So this prick goes all the way down on that prick like that. So once again, I'm just going to go crazy here and just put some grease on this, because sometimes it doesn't get oil when it's all locked together. And I've seen them rust and corrode in the past. So it never hurts just to put that shit on there like that. Sweet. And then all we need to do, according to this, is put our bearing on and then our nut. And then we can put all our kicker gear stuff on there that isn't on this book. So I'm going to go over to the vise and we can lock all this down and get it ready to chuck in the case. Alright, so we're just going to get our main shaft, put it in our vise. Nothing, not too tight, just sit it in there. And then our freaking bearing goes on. So this should be a pretty tight fit. So I'm just going to get a bit of tube so that I can knock this on. I can't find anything right now. See if I can just put this bitch on. You know what I'll use? My other freaking gear. Alright, so we can start our nut now. So that is going to be enough driving force to send this thing home. So a nut and our lock washer, don't forget that. Sweet, so now this nut will pull our bearing down to where it needs to be. It also locks our first and second gear there. I've seen it where this nut has not been the whole way home and the first and second gear was just floating around. So that's not ideal. There it is. Sorted. Like I said, make sure that doesn't lock around. So that's that. We just want to just do our lock tab now. Bend that over. Like so. And then let's put our kicker gear stuff on. So remember that we want to put our little plate on first. So just make sure you got it around the right way. It's the way with the countersunks in it. So that goes like that. And then we have our spring, right? And then we have our little kicker gears here. So you just got to remember that we have a key that goes in here. So here is said key, and then a nut. So where's the nut? So then we have a nut that goes on top. Here it is. Which way around does it want to go? Probably that way. Yep. So push this down. Sometimes it's easy to set the key first. I know I've got it around the wrong way for you guys to see, but take my word for it. I'm putting the key in. And this has a lock washer as well. That's not it. Oh, this has got the wrong lock washer. So this lock washer is for a 2-key type. So I'm just going to flatten one of those. Oh. Stay on there, you fucking dirty cunt. Alright, our lock washer goes on. And then our nut. How good is that? So now we make sure this makes the good noises. It does. What a good kicker gear. Plenty of engagement. So that is basically most of our main shaft put together. So, oh, hold on, I want to do this. Don't forget to knock your freaking washer over here. Do this, and then we can put it in the case. Alright, so I changed the view of the camera. Hopefully you guys can see me assemble this thing a bit better from up there. But basically, I've got the little guy set out here. Basically what we need to achieve here, we need to put our rollers in our top gear in our case to start with. So how we do that, put our case to the side, get our top gear here, put some grease on the freaking thing. As always, grease the hell out of this stuff. This, the grease is starting to melt. That's how hot it is today. Oh, the grease is so sloppy today. It is super hot in Australia today. Would be at 35, 38-ish Celsius. So what's that for you? I don't know. Is that like 90 or 100 Fahrenheit? Someone do the conversion for me, would they? So we have our thrust washer at the bottom. This is for our rollers. Wanted to put it the new side up, of course. So grease the hell out of this, because you guessed it, we are sticking all those other rollers to the side of this so we can put it in the case. But like I said, the grease is not very sticky. It's fucking hot. So we just stick this to the sides, go around and put all of the rollers on there. So there should be none left. Pretty sure it's 88 is how many rollers, needle rollers there are to a gearbox. So this will take all of them. So let's tune back in when I have this all set up, eh? Alright, so I've got all my rollers stuck on there now with this grease that has turned into oil, but I'm just going to grease up the inside of my top gear like that, and then we want to put this in the case. Now this can be a little bit fiddly, but we stand the case up like this and then nice and easy feed our gear in here. We should freaking poke it in. Right, so there is all my rollers in there. That is actually a super nice fit. There is no movement there at all. So once we've done that bit, I just like to put, so this is our outer race for our rollers. Obviously, like I said, they need to race both sides. I like to stick that on there, stops that from falling out, but you don't want to hammer it home. So now that we have our top gear in there, feels super nice, we can start putting the other shit in, really. So what comes next is we need to put our third gear in, right? Don't forget our dog. So this is what changes the gear from fourth to third. Remember, there's a high on here. Remember that. So the high has got to go towards the top gear. High, high gear. So all we really do, just like I have with everything else, just grease this bitch up just to stop it from picking up anywhere that it might. Give it a bit of lubrication before we start it. So basically we slide this thing in. On the way through, we want to pick up our third gear, so put that in. We want to pick up our thrust washer, so put that in. We want to pick up our circlip, so this holds the thrust washer and third gear off to the side. And then we want to put our dog in. So this is our shifter selector, whatever you want to call it. Remember, high to high. Put that all in there, and then we just feed this through. Hopefully my hat's not in the way. Feed that through, and as we come through, we just keep feeding this stuff on. It'll get a bit tricky in a second, because we'll have to feed the circlip and the washer onto the spline. So circlip there, feed that onto the spline, yep. Now I need to get the circlip on there. So this is where I might get in your way. So 2 screwdrivers will usually do this. You just want to hook it over. Don't go too crazy because you'll bend the spring, the circlip, and then it's not going to be as good. Alright, so now you can see I've got the circlip started on the spline. That's the fucking hard part. You just keep pushing this on. Turn our little thing here to the right spot too. Keep pushing that on. And then we just want to push all this home. So right back in 3rd gear there's a little groove that we want to put this in. Alright, so that's got it. So now that's on there. We want to make sure our dog goes on. So our dog's on. So the last thing to do is knock this bearing race into the housing. Now, a lot of people whinge about how I do this, but this is the way you do it. You got to knock it home. So that is knocking that bearing housing inside the case. Now, everyone whinges because I'm putting load into the bearing, but this bearing can handle tons and tons of weight. A soft hammer on the end of it's not going to fucking hurt it. All you YouTube comment section mechanics can do your own videos putting them together. That is how you do it. So hear that note change? That is our bearing seat home. That's nice. So 4th gear, look at that, moves a treat. The dog back and forth, absolute treat. 3rd gear, look at that. That is pretty well our main shaft assembly done. All we've got to do is whack our bolts in this side. So I'll go through, knock these bolts in, and then we'll start putting the countershaft in. So now that all my bolts in the end here are all tightened up, all this is pretty well done and functional. So now all we need to do is chuck our countershaft in. Now remember, I have changed my thrust washer here, so that should be the right size now. I put a little bit of oil on my shaft here just so that it goes through the grease a bit easier. This is going to be a bit harder with this thing loaded with gears. So what I like to do, mesh it with the gears beside it and then slowly drop it in there. Now you shouldn't have to force any of this, so don't be pushing too hard or anything like that. Oh, you're Is it? It can't be. It's fucking that close. The third must be fucking too big. Must be too many teeth in it. That's not right. It's fucking not meshing properly. Third is too big. So I'm having meshing issues here. So there's something to do with this 3rd gear is not meshed correctly with this gear. So something here is the wrong amount of teeth. So I'm going to have to go and count these teeth now, pull the whole thing apart again, and then try and work out which one's supposed to go in there. This is just the headaches that you go through trying to work out a basket case. They are so fiddly. Stuff that's never been together again. Someone's just thrown a heap of crap in a box and hope it goes together. This is why basket cases cost so much money to put together. This is already blowing out. I've got like 20 hours putting this gearbox together just because of every little bit and piece that I've had to change and try and make work. So just another hurdle. This main shaft's gonna have to come back out and we're gonna have to work out what's going on with third gear. All the rest seem to mesh, first, second, all that. It's just our third gear not meshing. So back to the drawing board. Okay, I have scratched my head and I've finally worked out what was going on with this gearbox. So if you look at a ratio chart, it'll tell you what ratios need to go with what. So what gear set needs to go in, for instance. So I was talking about our third gear here on our main shaft not meshing with our countershaft assembly here. And that is because we had some mismatched shit. So this, believe it or not, is a close ratio Andrews countershaft gear set. So what's happening is this is an 18 tooth and that's a 24 tooth. So that doesn't go together. We need to run a 23 tooth third if we're going to run an 18 tooth countershaft. So it needs to be a 17 24 or an 18 23. So we didn't have that. So I had to change the countershaft again back to the old countershaft assembly. So if we're going back to the old countershaft assembly, I had to put the caged rollers in here instead of having the loose roller. So I've gone through and done that. But the other thing we had to change, remember we had to change countershaft because they're different. If you guys can't use one of these micrometers, then you really shouldn't be putting one of these boxes together. Now these look exactly the same, there's just one difference. One is 5 thou bigger than the other. And believe it or not, 5 thou will blow your gearbox up if you get it wrong. So I had to put in a, what is this? A 76 to 79 countershaft. So the reason we went for that and not a later model is so it still runs our little washer that stops our countershaft from spinning. If we were to run a later countershaft than that, you would have had to run this plate on the end of our main shaft there. And this plate encapsulates the end of the countershaft in a later model. So we didn't want that. I didn't want to have to change this plate in here. So that's why I've gone with the 76 to 79. I've pushed the new bearings in there and that thing goes in there freaking schmick now. Look at that. So this is what we're going to use now. But because we've changed the countershaft by 5 thou, I had to knock in a new bush into the gearbox. So this bush on the end is what the countershaft goes through. Now, if we have a look at our old bush on the new countershaft, it is sloppy as fuck. It's a cock in a sock. So it's another thing that will blow your gearbox up. So I had to change the bush in this side. The bush in the other side, the kicker side, was fine. So I left that alone. Changed the primary side bush. Pushed the bearings into that, and I had to run a later style countershaft. So before you want to run any of this, just make sure all this crap goes in the box. That goes in there nicely. The other thing you can do, you don't have to have your countershaft assembly together to test our end float. So all we do, we just chuck it in there like that. I've already done this, but chuck it in, make sure that goes in, and now you can see our gears mesh properly. So that is mint, our gears mesh properly, it all goes together. I have already checked this, like I said. I had to go a bit bigger on our thrust washer, not the end of the world. So this thing is good to go together now. So let me move that camera and we will chuck this countershaft assembly together and then put it in the box. So all my countershaft assembly back together, you guys saw how that went together. I don't have to go through that. So surely I have paid my dues here and this thing will just float together. Remember, a bit of oil on our countershaft might make it slide through a bit easier and pick up the stuff that we want. So once again, sit it in your main shaft and float it down. So I've put a bit of grease on my thrust washer and I hope it stays in the right spot. So line that up, that looks nice. Come on, gearbox. Oh shit, burst freaking go. Check that out. So I need to put a washer on that, so I'm not gonna send that home yet, but look at our float is freaking mint. Tiny little bit of float there. Exactly what we want. So thank fuck for that. So I'm gonna go through, put this O-ring on here, lock up. Remember, we gotta put our little washer on there with our nut. That stops our counter shaft from spinning. So I've got to put all that on. And then basically we're going to get to our shifter forks, and I'm going to time this thing. I'm not sure if I'll do it in this video. I think this video is a bit long, so I might do a video on just timing this gearbox. So let's get this counter shaft all buttoned up. Righto, I got all my counter shaft buttoned up here. I put my nut on. I've got my lock washer on there. All that's tightened up. Put my O-ring on there. Now we have a plate that goes over the end of our counter shaft too, and we are gonna absolutely sink that with Sikaflex to stop that from leaking at all. That's one of the main places that leaks as well. But speaking of leaking, let's sort out our, I don't like this seal actually. Let me get another one. Let's put the main oil seal in our gearbox here and our nose shaft seal here. So like I said, this is a kit that I got, Jim's kit, but this seal is not as good as the ones you'd get in a James kit. So this is the James one. This is a much nicer seal. So I'm gonna get rid of that one and put the good one in for you, Travis. You're welcome. So this one's a little bit tricky. I had to make this tool to put this guy on, and a little trick so that you're not trying to seat the seal on this on the way in. You put this on first. That makes your life so much easier. So of course a bit of oil. Put the seal in this first, because you'll fuck the seal if you're trying to hammer it in there and then put that on at the same time. And don't forget this guy. This is the little cork gasket that stops, well, that's supposed to stop the oil from going around that main seal out the sides. So this is meant to crush in there. Doesn't really do much, but let's just put it in there because it's supposed to be there. Doesn't mean it freaking works. So that in there, and then we put this down, and you see that goes over there now. We don't have to worry about trying to seat our seal nicely on that. So just get our little doodad here. Right, that is freaking home. Cool. Main seal done. Now the nose seal can be a little bit trickier. A lot of people put that on before. I forgot, to be honest. So if you're doing a gearbox that's together and you want to change this is how you got to do it anyway. So it's not like it's the end of the world. This is the way you're supposed to do it. Well, when I say supposed to, you have to do it. Can be a little bit tricky to start. Just work your way around it. Nice and gentle. Whoop, too much. Well, you don't want to hammer that too far in because the seal will end up binding into our bush in there. So that's pretty well that, all sorted out. Let's put our shifter shaft in there. So all this spins nicely, that's what you want to be trying. Looks pretty sweet. Now in this little James kit, I keep dick teasing you about this James kit. I'm just gonna freaking show you it now. So this is the kit, Trans Rebuild Kit, Big Twin 4-speed. So this is pretty well anything from 36 to 76, I believe. So everything that's still roller bearing, loose roller. So the part number for this is 33031-36. Like I said, this thing came with fucking everything. Came with seals, came with a new shifter shaft, all that crap. Came with all new clips, didn't come with these, but brand new counter shaft. all the bushes to do your kicker and everything. What's this guy? Kicker gear, bushing, yep. Came with even an early style 3rd gear bush. Came with all the bushes to do all of this gearbox, all the seals, everything basically. So that's a pretty good kit to get if you're doing this. It makes these things freaking brand spanker. So like I said, we want to have a look at our shifter fork. Now, I am going to time these guys, like I said. So I'm just going to put them in for now. A lot of people whinge about how much grease I put on this stuff, but I'd rather be looking at it than for it. It's the old saying. So he goes in there like that. They only go one way, guys, but you can get them upside down. So one thing to remember. You won't put the... You'll see that they're facing the wrong way once you put the shifter shaft in. So this comes with an early style clip, a late style clip, which doesn't really matter. And then this has an early style, so probably going to put both on here. Now I've got a bit of paint in there, but that's still good. As everything, guys, bit of freaking grease. Make sure this goes through the correct way too. I want to use this side, so let's put that in. Through one, and if you have these the wrong way, like I do, you can see that one's pointing up and one's pointing even further up. So they need to be pointing the same direction for our lid to work. So take this back out. This one must be in the wrong direction. Turn him over. There we go. Now they're both pointing the same direction. So that goes in there. Once again, I'm going to goo the outside of this just because I freaking hate these things leaking. So in a late style box, like I said, it'll have a circlip, and in the early style, it'll have this little grub screw. That little grub screw goes just in there, and the shaft has a notch in it that accepts the little dick on this guy. Sweet. So let's go through now and let's go seal up these two shafts so they stop leaking, eh? Righto, I have my freaking gasket maker here that is absolutely on the last legs. This will be the last job this thing sees. Have a look at it. Anyone see the... There it is. Alright, so what we're going to do... Fuck, I need to stop saying alright, so... I'm just going to pop that guy open. So I have brake cleaned all of this. This is super, super clean. So what we do, get our goo, jam it all the way in there. Of course I get an itchy ear. Jam it right in there to stop all that oil from coming out through there. These things need all the help they can get to seal up. Gooed the hell up. And also, they have a seal that goes on them. I'm going to goo the seal as well. These are the little things that you do to make these gearboxes seal really well. Leak-free box is the, what we're aiming for here. So that on there, and then they got these tiny little screws. So when I smeared all that glue on there, I got a bit in all the holes. So the holes go all the way through just to be annoying. So they will be all sorted. They will have a little bit of sealing going on. Let's go around, tighten all these up. A later box won't have this either. Later box, they sort of didn't worry about it. I suppose there's more holes they got to drill in all the case and everything, and another piece. Later boxes are just an O-ring that is supposed to stop it. So if you've got a later box, just cover the thing in goo to stop it, the outside in goo to stop it from leaking. These things aren't real great, are they? Okay, so with our counter shaft, our little shifter fork, do the same thing. Just make sure you get this stuff all the way around the hole and just leave a little nipple on it like that. That will seal it up so freaking well. There's no way that'll leak. And then all we want to do is get a rag with a bit of brake cleaner here, and you can just wipe the excess off. If you're going to do the job, you might as well freaking do it properly. Alright, so I want to have a look at this kicker cover. Now, another one of the main leaks on a kicker cover is leaking through your kick shaft. So, you can see this one has a little bit of movement up and down. It's not terrible, but you always see them weeping out of here, and that is because this bush in here gets flogged out. Now, this came with a bushing kit side cover with seal. So, the other thing that always gets flogged out on these things is the seal. So the way these stupid things work, it's basically a bush both sides, and then there's a seal in the middle like that. And that sort of stops, obviously, the oil coming down the shaft and then out here. So I want to put these bushes in. Like I said, these aren't terrible, but because we got them, let's just go through and do it. So all we want to do is knock these bushes out. Just want to knock those guys all the way out, and then we'll have a look at pressing these ones in. The old bushes here, knocked them out. You know what, they don't look terrible. You can see a little bit of, you know, pitting and wear and stuff in there. They weren't horrible, but new ones are going to be that much better. So I pressed them in from one direction, right? So I pressed the bottom one the whole way through to the bottom so it was flush. And then I just pushed the top one so it was flush with the top. So that in the center there, I'm not sure if you can see it, we have our gap for our our seal. Now we're not going to put that in because if you see, it doesn't fit. So this was a press fit, and now I've got to hone this to fit this, which is super annoying. So this is just under 3/4. So you've got to hone this to 3/4, and then your shaft will fit. So alright, so I got this cover pretty well sorted out. I just got a 3/4 ream, and I just reamed this hole with it. So what a ream does, a ream gets a hole pretty well bang on size. They get it way closer to size than what a drill bit does. So the idea of it, this shaft has been ground a tiny little bit under 3/4. So when we put this to 3/4, it has the float that we want. Look at that, there is no movement in that at all. So now that that is all sorted, we want to put our little seal in there, and we want to grease all this up. So, you know, heaps and heaps of grease, as usual. So we just want to stick it into that little hole in there. It's a bit fiddly. I think I just got it. Looks like it. So, does this still go in? So that is pretty well the kicker cover done. All we've got to do now is put our, where the hell did I put it? Can you guys see it? Here. Put this guy on. Now this has got to go a certain way. So it's got to go a way that is correspondent to your little tab insert there and the little notch. So we'll just have a look in the book before we put this together and work out which direction that needs to be. But that is pretty well it sorted. So now that we've done pretty well everything else on this box, I want to go ahead and put our kicker cover on. Now, remember oh God. To put this thing on, a lot of people don't realize this little knob here, this is where it stops when it retracts the whole way, and then it also stops down here once you've kicked it. So when you put this together, this little knob has to be in between the two stops. So there's one stop and there's the other. So your knob's just got to be in between somewhere. So that goes on really nicely. Now, don't let your little gearbox fool you with the gasket. It goes one direction. And what you look for is that little notch in there. See that little notch down there? So just make sure you got it around that way. I've done it a heap myself and had it upside down. So just make sure that's right. With every one of these paper gaskets, you want to grease it. Now this probably seems a bit, the wrong thing to do, but the grease actually helps it stick. When a grease dries, it goes super, super sticky. So grease makes this thing seal really freaking well. So grease him up just like that. Make sure that little dip is in the right place. Push this, be really gentle with these. They're the freaking worst sometimes. If your studs aren't perfectly straight, this is really tricky to get on. So is the kicker cover. Cool. So just make sure your little dip's in the right spot. So we're on there. Let's go, like I said, make sure our knob's in the right way. It sucks when you put your knob in the wrong way. Just like that. Now, a lot of you might think that running a nylock style nut is the right thing to do. Yeah, it might be a little bit better, but I like to run just a normal style nut. It looks way better on these old boxes. They never had a nylock style nut back then. So at an early genuine bike, you'll never see a nylock nut. So I'm just putting a little bit of anti-seize on here because I do not want these nuts to rust onto our brand new Parkerized studs here. So I also got a tiny little washer just so it doesn't mess up the case when I tighten it up. What I like to do with these, I only put 2 of the bolts on just to hold the cover on, and then I'm going to hook all the spring and everything up and make sure that it works. So let's put these opposites on, tighten them up, and then let's make sure our kicker works. Put the spring on and all that. It's fucking nice when you got the right studs on these things. They're all the same length. It all looks super, super nice. So let's have a look. Make sure that this is springing the right direction. So it wants to return it, so the spring has to be here and pulled around. So that's the right spot. A hammer is usually your friend here. Once you get this in the right spot, there it is. I like to use just a long nose plier to do this bit. There we go. All right, where's the shifter? Let's make sure this works. So kicking will be this direction. It's not the whole way back up yet. That's the kicker the whole way up. So we just do that. Works a treat. So I'm going to go through, put all these nuts on, and then let's put the lid on. Basically, the last thing I got to do on this gearbox, a few of you might have noticed, I forgot to put the throwout bearing in here, so I went back, put the throwout bearing in. I went and put a 25 tooth sprocket on this thing. Yeah, 25 and 26 is literally the best highway gear. Like if you still do around town stuff, 26 is probably a little bit big. You want to go with 25. So that's what I've done with this thing. Really all we got to do next is put our lid on. I'm going to do a timing video in another episode. I won't do it in this one. You guys are probably bored already and changed it anyway. So basically what you want to do, you want to grease up your little fork cup dog guys there, put them on, and then you just want to make sure your gearbox and your lid are both in neutral. To put your gearbox in neutral, you just put your dog between the 2 gears. So that is neutral there. And then on your gearbox, you've got to look at your little detent guy over here. So that is first, and you see on your these little lobes here, there's a half lobe there. So that is neutral there. So you just want to move this till it's in neutral there. And then obviously, I'm not going to do this up because I'm going to time it, but I will just show you. So grease this before you put it together. He lives on there. And then this guy just pops on, just like that. And the only screw that you need to worry about is your breather screw. So this is an early case with the breather here. A later case has the breather on the bolt. Now, I didn't have the breather for this, so I'm just gonna cap that and use a later style breather. You wanna put it on this bolt here. This bolt here goes through to the kick cover side and it vents through that bolt there. So that is pretty well all you need to know to slap that lid on. That is our basket case 4-speed gearbox rebuild done. This thing is ready to go on the bike now. Unfortunately, I have a whole panhead engine to build yet, so this was just one piece of the puzzle. Still got to do the frame, still have to do the engine. So if you guys like what you see, chuck us a subscribe or just watch a couple more videos if you're already subscribed. I'd like to do this stuff full time, so help me help you. So I'm going to have a separate shorter video just timing one of these boxes, showing you how to do it. You do need a tool to do it though, but not the end of the world. So I'll see you on that one.